Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Thursday, November 21st, 2013. We're headed right directly into the holiday season, and what is just ahead of us is the anniversary tomorrow of the assassination of JFK. And Alex Jones is covering that very well, but to frame what other people are doing, I wanted to just offer a reminder that a lot of the angst around JFK, maybe, if you will, negative energy that moved people to want to kill him, had to do with his wanting to limit evil, withdrawing from the Vietnam War, limiting the Federal Reserve or even eliminating it. And Lyndon Johnson was allegedly upset about some actions or inactions of JFK, and of course the Bay of Pigs. And I'm guessing that most people who are interested in the assassination of JFK and the events and controversy surrounding it will probably be watching something this weekend. The Hollywood film JFK, or maybe some of the documentaries that have been made. An interesting one is Files on JFK, the man who claims that he took the kill shot, and he's now in prison, reformed, and walking with the Lord. I'm not positive he's still alive because that documentary is a couple years old, but that's a very interesting one. But in the context of the Federal Reserve, the financial system, I am mentioning this post on Facebook from Fritz Springmeier, Bitcoin's forerunner to the cashless society. Fritz has so much knowledge. He's really such a treasure to the truth and liberty movement. Such a genuine person, and if I can use the phrase without sounding cliched, good heart. He wrote here not only about Bitcoin, but also about the history of money. He wrote here, this post will cover the concept of money, mediums of exchange, a brief history of it in America, and some biblical views of the subject. He ends with the very encouraging statement that their evil devices won't last forever. Money has been an evil device. It has been a tool of enslavement for some time. And Fritz definitely gets into the Federal Reserve. This is, as I said, this is a tremendous round earth. You know, a lot of times you look at information, it's flat. Probably a lot of these videos seem flat at times, but Fritz gives a round perspective, what something is, why it's important, and how it fits with other things that are important. And I'm hoping at some point he pulls all this information together into maybe history volumes or some kind of comprehensive work that shows how all these things are connected. I know he's done that to some extent in the Bloodlines of the Illuminati, but I know there's a lot more that he's been sharing on Facebook, and he, as I said, he's a treasure, and he carries a treasure. Just a little more information about the Federal Reserve and the struggle over the control of money. And Fritz, in his status, did mention Abraham Lincoln and what Lincoln tried to do or did do, financing the war with currency that was issued by the U.S. government. And I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding Abraham Lincoln. Some people even think that his wife shot him. He was related by, I think, by blood to some of the Illuminati families. I'm not judging his whole life and everything he did, but I want to make the statement that in issuing the greenbacks, I fully believe that he was trying to restore sovereignty to America, the U.S. as a nation. Of course, he also was complicit in setting up the corporation that now masquerades as the United States government. Many people say that he intended to dismantle that and return to a constitutional republic, and just did not live long enough to do so. Here is a website if you want to delve a little more deeply into the JFK story without watching a bunch of documentaries. PoliticalAssassinations.com. This is COPA, Coalition on Political Assassinations. And they have a lot of information here on the assassination, not only of JFK, but also other political assassinations. And it's an organization that is seeking very determinedly to expose lies, and they've been working on this, on the JFK assassination and the lies that have surrounded it for 49 years. So kudos to them. They're probably some of the original conspiracy theorists who obviously were writing about and exposing genuine conspiracies, not just theories. And the press, of course, is needed by the conspirators as they cover up their dirty work. And I was reminded of Operation Mockingbird, CIA media manipulation. I just did a brief search, and it happened that Prison Planet had this comprehensive article with a lot of really good information. This, of course, Operation Mockingbird has been used at different times in the history of this country. I believe it's being used very strongly now, and I've mentioned the infiltration of alternative media and bickering and infighting and people making mountains out of molehills in order to divide and conquer us. And I believe that it is probably Operation Mockingbird that is behind some of this. This keeps coming up. I know I've mentioned this before. Right now, I feel that this topic is very significant and something that we need to be aware of and address, and maybe change our way of thinking, rewire ourselves a little bit, our emotions and our tribal instincts, maybe a kind of tolerance that really will benefit us all, instead of going along with all the infighting. Just today, again, on Facebook, and yesterday, I've noticed these intense confrontations, battles, struggles, whatever you want to call them, between different factions of liberty people. It seems to me, first of all, a tremendous, tremendous waste of time and effort arguing amongst ourselves when the real issues are outside. Just as a reminder, this video from Dutchsinse, They Offered Me the World. Now, I'm not going to be able to supply the link to this because this video is unlisted now. Be considerate and think twice before sharing. I don't think this is the link that I provided when I addressed this issue before. I found this link not because I have some kind of a private in, but because I did a search for Dutchsinse, They Offered Me the World on YouTube, and this video came up as a link under somebody else's comment or under somebody else's video posting. So you may find it that way, but I'm not going to post this link, sadly, and I'm not sure if Dutchsinse intentionally made it unlisted or if this was some kind of a YouTube slip up, but I'm going to respect the fact that it is unlisted, and I'm not going to give the link. But this is really the evidence. You know, if Dutchsinse was offered money large amounts of money. And they told him he was going to maintain his independence, but with a large sum of money, you always have to wonder at some point if there's going to be a string attached. And he was asked to sign some oaths and some things of that nature. So I think it's always important to exercise caution about such things. And if somebody wants to offer you money, I don't know, be cautious, exercise use every ounce of discernment that you have, and ask yourself what are the strings going to be down the road. As far as dividing the liberty movement and disinformation and trolls and others being used to cause infighting and division, I am turning to the Bible, Acts 23, verses 5 through 7. Interestingly enough, Paul the Apostle was raised as a Pharisee, trained as a Pharisee. He knew the tricks. And a lot of people hate Paul. They read the books that he wrote in the Bible, and they feel that he was being judgmental and nitpicky. Well, the truth is that Paul was one of the ones who insisted on liberty and insisted that the Jewish law not be imposed on the new believers. So I want to dispel that, but I am going to acknowledge that he was trained as a Pharisee. Therefore, he probably knew the tricks the Pharisees used. And there were not Jesuits in that day, but if there had been, the Pharisees may have been friends and allies with the Jesuits. To some extent, they're cut from the same cloth. So here's what Paul did in a moment where he was in personal danger. He'd been arrested, and his fate was being decided by this group of religious men. And Paul said, "I was not conscious, brethren, that he was a high priest, for the scripture says, you shall not speak ill of a ruler of your people." But Paul, when he perceived that one part of them were Sadducees, and the other part Pharisees, cried out to the council, "Brethren, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with regard to the hope and the resurrection of the dead that I am indicted and being judged." In other words, he was intentionally pitting the Sadducees against the Pharisees. He knew what their conflicting ideals were, and he manipulated them. No, going back into quoting from Acts 23, this is verse 7. "So when he had said this, an angry dispute arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the whole assemblage was divided into two factions." Problem solved for Paul. He manipulated them. This entire scene broke down, and he turned the focus away from himself. He created a diversion so that he was not the enemy anymore. He created a diversion so that these people considered one another the enemy. And this is an effective technique, and this is a very simple example that doesn't take very long to communicate. And interestingly enough, I believe that one of the divisive ideas that's being used in the liberty movement is to try to pit Christians against people of other faith, atheists, agnostics, so on and so forth. You know, if we can just remember who is the enemy, and there are even big controversies on Facebook between OPPT and people who are pursuing liberty using the UCC system, and other people who want to simply return to the Constitution and the rule of law. And these controversies flare up, and people lose perspective and lose sight of who the real enemy is. And I believe that, Operation Mockingbird-esque projects are being released to do this intentionally. Justice Paul intentionally caused an angry dispute between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were divided into two factions. So, to illustrate this, I remembered Starship Troopers, know your foe. Now, how easy would it be if, as David Icke says, the evil guys are reptilians? Okay, I think that's possible. I think that I call demons what he calls reptilians. However, if these reptilians or demons, whatever, appeared to be what they secretly are, how easy would it be for us to know our enemy? And I'm actually going to close with this. We do not have the luxury of seeing the manifestation with our eyes of the evil that is inherent in the people who have sold themselves to do evil. It's not a coincidence. At some point down the road, they made a decision that they were going to serve evil. And if we can learn how to recognize that and distinguish that from, just the other liberty people who maybe they don't have the same religious faith I do, maybe they don't agree with me on how we get out of this mess, but they are not the enemy. So, know your enemy. Thanks for tuning in for today's news. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, and insist on liberty.